Welcome everyone. This is the public launch. It's actually the second session of the public launch. We had a session earlier today to see people where Brian is in Southeast Asia and the Far East and Australia and all of those places. But we're having a second session to see people who live a bit more westerly direction. And welcome to this session. We're going to really just present to you what has been worked on for the last 3 years, which is the Global Alliance for Values-Based Education, GAVE for short. We've been doing a lot of preparatory work, which we'll talk a little bit about, and we're going to now really present ourselves through this session, and more generally after the session, we aim to really now start expanding our scope and our range and our membership, and really get we've spent 3 years working out what we want to do and broadly how we're going to do it, but to actually carry out what we want to do, we really need more people on board, more skills, more expertise, more breadth. And that's what we're aiming to do in part by this session. So it's an introductory session for all of you. We've got 5 speakers actually who are going to speak to you from different aspects of what GAVE has been doing and what we intend to do, the history of it and its purpose and vision. And then, as I was saying to people who were here earlier, the idea after that is to have a general discussion for the last third of the session. My name, incidentally, is Charles Fowler. I have been the chair of the Human Values Foundation, an educational charity which promotes values-based programs to schools in the UK, where I'm based, and around the world. I'm also the global coordinator of World Values Day, which is an annual campaign, been running for about 10 years, which I know a number of you are aware of. And I'm actually the chair-elect of GAVE. I'm assuming the chair next year for 2026, 1 year only. We rotate the chairs. So we've had Professor Nazreen Dassou, who was I think our first chair, if I'm right to say that, who holds the UNESCO chair in values education. And then we had, after that, Thomas, sorry, my mind has gone, it's just gone dead. Thomas Nielsen of Canberra University, professor at Canberra University. And then I'll take the chair on, and then it rotates every year. So that's me. So before I go any further, I really want to hand over to Craig Sheely, Dr. Sheely, who is one of the founding members of GAVE. He was in at the start, which I wasn't. He is, for those of you that don't know him, the executive director of the International Beliefs and Values Institute, which developed under his leadership the Beliefs, Events and Values Inventory. He's a licensed clinical psychologist and was professor of graduate psychology at James Madison University for over 20 years. And has broad global experience of what's going on in the value space and connected spaces in education, which is extremely valuable to us. And Craig, I'm going to invite you to speak to us. Let me just, give me a second, I'll even highlight you. Good. Over to you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Charles. Thanks for moderating all this. Delighted to be here for part 2. We had a really nice turnout earlier today, and delighted to see everyone here, many friends as well, which is great. As Charles indicated, this launch has been a long time coming, quite frankly. And I'm delighted to be here. So my task is really to help give context. Why did GAVE happen? And I know from a lot of experience, from meetings we've all had, countless meetings really, projects, discussions over the years, that the biggest problem we values-based educators, scholars, practitioners, students, and leaders have, and when I say that, values-based, I'm referring to people who may not necessarily know that they are values-based. But in fact, several of the folks on this call, as the one earlier today, are doing this work in the world. And part of our job task as an organization is to help us understand the values-based nature of the work that we do, even if we're not altogether clear on that all the time. So our biggest problem, our biggest challenge is we don't have an international, interdisciplinary, and member-driven organization, professional organization for us all, which is focused on values and values-based education, research, and practice. We pay a price for not being organized. First, we lose the opportunity to influence pedagogies, programs, and policies. And second, we aren't learning from and helping each other. We end up doing what we do in relative isolation from one another with limited ability to scale up our work exponentially by coming together like this. Those are among the fundamental reasons we need the Global Alliance for Values-Based Education. Certainly, there have been many leading lights, including those in this meeting. We could note the indispensable work of Terry Lobat, Ron Toomey, Thomas Nielsen, the Australian Values Education Initiative, the work of Neil Hawkes, who's on the call today. You're going to hear from him, a pioneer in the field of VBE who has been doing this work for as long as anyone. Charles Fowler, whom you've heard from, leading the remarkable World Values Day Initiative, now in its 10th year. David Rouse, who's here with us today, has been doing excellent values work for years and is helping us with key aspects of setting up our organization. I'm pleased, very delighted to have Nazreen Dasu with this movement. She spoke to us earlier today, the UNESCO Values Education Chair, stellar researchers like Shagufa Kapadia, Chris Atchison, my friend and colleague, you're going to hear from her in a bit, and Jennifer Ma. Others here today, such as Darshan Narvaez, Hasina Ibrahim, didn't know I was going to call you out, did you? You're here, which is wonderful. And Rana Swanti Farmer, without whom we likely wouldn't be convening here now. For they and their 2022 conference in Australia on Education with the Heart are responsible for giving inspiration to GAVE. So the best part of this process over the past few years has been talking with so many of you all over the world who are doing extraordinary work on values, broadly defined. Many of you are old and now new friends, colleagues, and collaborators. From hundreds of dialogues and sources of input, I know there is a deep and wide consensus that we need this organization to learn who each other is, what each other is doing, and to serve as multipliers to one another and catalyzers of our values-based work and aspirations. In doing so, as our bylaws specify, and the Charter Steering Committee of GAVE was very clear on this point, GAVE needs to be owned by no one and belong to everyone. This member-driven organization flows from the ground up through 7 dynamic committees who pick their own leaders, and then the committee leaders pick the leaders of GAVE. And we all work together on the steering committee, which is designed to be responsive to our members and all they wish to pursue. So here's our chance. Join GAVE if you haven't already. Get involved. Join a committee. Let's make this happen. The foundational infrastructure is built. Let's create an organization for us all to get our work out there, as it's clearly, as we all see, clearly more needed than ever all over the world, not only in schools, of course, but in organizations and systems, in our communities, through our research, through grants, policy work, and international convenings we hold together. Along the way, and in conclusion, I suggest we avoid getting distracted by the daily noise all around us and focus with persistence and clarity on what we know deeply and do well all over the world as scholars, educators, practitioners, students, and leaders. Our values-based work is integral to helping humans learn, grow, and develop in ways that are aware, compassionate, and able to handle complexity in self, others, and the larger world. We have enormous promise and potential, and I look forward to seeing all we can do and be through GAVE in the months and years to come. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was wonderful. And how much you managed to cram into 5 minutes, I'm just astounded by.
Lots of practice.
Good. Thanks, and hello to those that turned up in the middle of Craig's talk just then. A whole contingent. I'm sorry if you were kept waiting a little bit, but good to see you all. And so we've heard a little bit about the background of GAVE and why we're having this session, which is really an introductory one to mark the launch of GAVE and to see, how many of you might be interested, frankly, in getting involved with us. So it's very much an exploratory, introductory session on both sides. the thing I think that it'd be good to hear now is we've got Ron and Swanti Farmer weren't able to be here today. Craig mentioned them in his talk. They were very much in the founding part of GAVE, because GAVE really sprung from a conference held and initiated by Ron and Swanti on the Gold Coast in Australia, which was all about putting heart back into education. I paraphrase the title a little bit. And it was a very powerful meeting of a lot of people involved in values education from around the world. And out of that came the idea, we must, we can't just stop at this one thing, we must get the message out. So I'm going to just show you a video clip that Ron and Sue have prepared. And just before I do that, just to give a little bit of background, because they're a very interesting couple. Ron lectured in clinical psychology in the University of New South Wales and was actually, and this was many, many years ago, trained the first practitioners, CBT practitioners and behavior modification practitioners in Australia before moving towards values and values education. And he and Swanti run workshops in values education, which they've been doing for many years, helping teachers and parents undergo a personal transformation to become the role models that are needed for the children they care for. And as an inspiration for that was very much the Tugulawawa school in Australia, which was a real groundbreaking school. It took in boys who have been kicked out of mainstream schools and provided for them a free full-time values-based education, which was remarkably transformative. And I think those who were at the conference were able to get some taste of that work there. So I'm going to now share the screen. With luck, we'll get here we are, and looks rather black, the screen. Oh, good, it's coming up.
대통령님이 오시는데
예.
That's not it, is it? It's always been running in the background. I'm going to have to go back.
Charles, you just need to rewind it, Charles. That's all.
I do, I know.
Okay.
Let me go back to the previous one. There we are, that looks more promising.
My name is Ron Farmer, and my wife Swanti. Swanti in particular was feeling that there's a lack of heart in education. The fact that the people who in publications were referring to the heart, there didn't seem to be any coalescing of coming together of that. So Swanti had this idea that we should have an international conference, so these like-minded, amazing people could all come together.
We both have been involved in value-based education since 1986. We strongly felt that it was time for all of us to come together to highlight how vital it is for the heart to be brought back into education. We did the summit in November 2022 on value-based education, at which eminent speakers gave their uplifting and heartwarming talks of embracing education with the heart. The summit was a resounding success, giving us all great hope for the future of value-based education.
When we look at education worldwide, we see that the focus is almost entirely upon academic performance. What this means is that we run a big risk of graduating clever scoundrels, that so many people who've come through the education system really don't have much of a moral compass. We need clever people for sure, but we don't need clever people who don't have a conscience. From the beginning, we've always felt what's lacking in the school system, any focus on spirituality. Certainly there are religious-based schools, but they tend to focus on one religion. And we felt that what the world needed was citizens who could recognise that all roads lead to Rome. The language we tried to use is one which is acceptable not only to all faiths, but also to agnostics and atheists, so that nobody's left out, because we're really all on the same road. Most people are open to the idea of some form of higher intelligence which is organising and running the world. You can call it God or a higher intelligence or something is behind all of this. We don't have to get hung up on the language. Something is making this happen. Something's organising all of that. It's not just an accident. And there's a saying that says the stars shine brightest on the darkest of nights. The education system in most countries in the world, it's lost its moral and spiritual direction. And so GAVE is in a position to provide this. And I think people worldwide are ready for it. The teachers have to recognise that their responsibility is to engage in an ongoing self-transformation so they become truly loving beings. And every child in their class feels deeply loved. One of the things I say to them, look, inside you is a diamond, and this diamond's covered with mud. Mud is your anger, sadness, depression, your fear of other people. We're the people are going to help you wash away the mud. We can no longer depend just upon the parents to do this. And if this is the foundation of education, all else will go well. As the teacher changes, the children will change. It only takes one person with a blazing light to lead the way, and everybody else can follow.
That's our hope it gave. We started with a summit with the title Embracing Education with the Heart. And that's the role that GAVE is going to play. With courage, focus, with open heart, and look for the good in everyone to make the world a better place, not for ourselves, but for everyone as a family, as one family.
So that's Ronald Siwanti, who really provided the initial energy to get this GAVE thing going. And also at the conference, I know, was Neil Hawkes. And I'm going to now introduce Neil to take on the discussion a little bit further. He's going to talk about what GAVE gives the world. Neil, can I just introduce you before putting you on the screen? Neil's known to many of you, I think, most of you maybe, as a speaker, educator, broadcaster, author, social commentator, very much in all of those things from a values perspective. He co-founded the Living Values Education organization, which is now very much global, founded the International Values-Based Education Trust and its educational arm, Values-Based Education, and has been one of the founders, as I mentioned, of GAVE. He's a UNITAR expert on ethical leadership, part of Values 20, advising G20 leaders, and has also written a book, My Heart, Transforming Lives Through Values. Neil, great to have you here. Over to you. What GAVE can give the world.
Thank you, Charles. I didn't recognize myself when you were talking then. Gosh, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. I'm feeling really emotional this afternoon in the UK, and as I was earlier today on the first session, because for me this is a dream come absolutely true. For many, many years as a values educator, I've been thinking, why can't we all come together? You know, I represent so many different organizations. You've mentioned Living Values. In the early days, it was the Human Values Foundation I helped with a bit, and then values-based education and all that. And I help so many different organizations. And my discovery was they're all full of wonderful people who are going in the same direction. They've all got incredible hearts and they're all saying very similar things, sometimes with a different language, but basically it's the same thing. So my dream was, how can we all come together? And at Ron and Sawante's wonderful Gold Coast conference, some of us got together and had a chat and said, how can we make this thing, how can we turn up the volume of values-based education? And hence GAVE was absolutely born. And I'm just thrilled because one of my worries is that some of us are getting older now and we need people who, with the same passion, the same enthusiasm to come into the organizations, because as Craig said, we're at a particular time in human development when we really do need to really think about our values. Before coming this afternoon to this meeting, I was watching a video that's on LinkedIn and a few other places, and it features a wonderful school in Mozambique called the Willow School. And there's a student who's talking us through what makes the school a values-based school. And at the end of that video, he said, VBE is not just about learning facts, but how to be better people, better people. What do we give to the world? Well, my area in ethical intelligence is the ability to ethically self-regulate your own behavior. And I've stood up in all sorts of places, including the United Nations, and I've said, if only our leaders were ethically led, our world would be quite a different place. I am reminded so often from so many people that there's so much corruption in the world, self-interest, ego-led people who are in it for their own or their families' benefit, but aren't altruistic. Values-based education develops altruism, altruistic agency, that ability to get out there and make changes. Values-based because it's based on values, but those values underpin everything that an organization or a school actually does. But what it has to ensure is that there's consistency between what individuals in an organization feel about values and the institutional values. Values often fall down because those two things aren't aligned. So a lot of honest conversation has to go on. And the important point is that it's no point in talking about values. We can all talk about them. It's being a courageous advocate and training yourself in all situations that you will act altruistically and morally, no matter what happens. So you need to develop, as Mary Gentili says, a muscle, a mental, ethical muscle that in any situation you put to use. So what can GAVE give us? I think it gives us a collective voice, a thriving community. It raises the profile of VBE so that we can talk to governments. It helps to nurture all the human intelligences. AI cannot have ethical intelligence. It doesn't have emotional intelligence. It doesn't have critical thinking in the way that a human being does. So schools and organizations that have VBE develop that infrastructure inside them. So we become advocates of truth, not falsehood. Research-based. This is a biggie for me. A lot of my own work has been sort of pushed aside because they say your research is minimal. We need more data. And I think GAVE will give that amount of research. And I'm so thrilled that so many academics have joined our group. Lastly, GAVE gives hope to the world. I think that we desperately need the hope. And I think as our organization spreads and people find out more about what VBE is, that it's underpinned by really great thinkers who know that the health of human health and our well-being all depend on our value system that we have. So GAVE has, I think, the most incredible future, but it needs you. It needs each one of us. And I'm thrilled that it's a membership organization, so it won't be dominated by a few loud voices, including me. So thank you very much. I'm delighted to see you all here today. Thank you, Charles.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Neil. That was fantastic. And I think inspiring for us all. And we're actually turning next to look back at some of the other reasons why we can be inspired, but for the prospects of values education in the future. Because I'm going to just play another. There's somebody else that couldn't be with us today, although he was in the UK until a few days ago. Terry Lovett, Professor Terry Lovett, who's one of the most distinguished voices, I guess, in research on values education. Terry is emeritus professor at the University of Newcastle, visiting professor at and UNESCO UNITWIN partner at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa, and also honorary research fellow at the University of Oxford. And his research for 20 years or more has focused on values education. He was notably, I think for the purposes of what we're saying today, he was the chief investigator. He was managing the research and practice projects for the Australian Values Education Programme, which many of you will know was probably the biggest practical experiment, if you like, or exercise experience in nationwide values education that I think there's been, and that's not to say there haven't been others in different parts, some of the Northern Europe ones, and there's been others going on, and one is just starting in the Philippines, I guess. But this was a very well researched, well covered, and Terry was involved in really masterminding the whole research input into that as values education was put into schools across Australia. So I'm now going to share a message from him. So I say he couldn't be here today, but I hope this will be illuminating. I'll just put it on a full screen and kick off.
I think there's lots wrong, but just focusing on one thing that I think is enlightening. Fred Newman from Wisconsin in his research concluded that the school could have the most highly qualified staff, the best resources, the most robust policies, aims, goals, directives. But if students didn't feel cared for, safe, secure, and trusting of their teachers, then something invariably went wrong. The same message came through in a research study into over 300,000 students being asked what mattered to them most about their teachers. Number one was that their teachers cared about them. Two, they trusted their teachers. Three, their teachers made teaching interesting. And four, their teachers were organised and had good control. Modern educational neuroscience shows the importance of having the brain in the right emotional space, safe, secure, and caring space. But what do we tend to get from education systems worldwide? All the talk is about performance, outcomes, testing, measuring, and standardise this and standardise that. Education's first and foremost about relationships, positive relationships. If we get that wrong, then something will go wrong. And it has. Stats on student disengagement, including school bullying, are worse than ever. Teacher burnout and attrition, you name it, we have a problem. My vision comes largely from my experience in the Australian Values Education Program. We prioritised the relationships between teacher and student, student and student, school staff and students, even the relationships between the school and parents and the wider community. We talked about the importance of respect, trust, care, responsibility, acceptance of difference, forgiveness, etc., etc. The language of values became part of school discourse, be it the signage on the street front, to the language the school principal would use in assembly, to the language used in behaviour management situations, and all the way through to the way curriculum content was unpicked in classroom learning, focusing on the value and relevance of the content, be it a theme in English literature, a discovery in science, whatever. Through this approach, schools became calmer places, safer, more secure, happier places. Teachers and students reported higher levels of well-being, social, emotional, personal. Reductions of things like teacher and student absenteeism, behaviour management issues, etc. Academic learning began to improve. Reports of students being more engaged, doing better work, having better discussions, teachers talking about their own pedagogy being more robust. It's not that academic learning is not important to those who promote a values pedagogy. It's a case of how to get there. Teacher education's a massive issue. Its history is of being more reactive than proactive. We started to do it in the later days of the values education program, courses forming within teacher education around the country. Sadly, the minute the values education program itself was wound down and out, those courses started to also wind down and out. I think most other professional programs do a better job than we do in education. The average medical education program ensures that student doctors are given the latest research and come into the profession with fresh ideas. I don't think enough of that happens in teacher education, but it should. It's a challenge to hold people together around some sort of vision when they're coming from different research traditions, but I think we'll be stronger if we can include rather than exclude. We've got a huge battle to wage. We can't afford to be divided unnecessarily.
Great. Okay, so that is, I think, a very, very interesting account of, in a very short space of time. It's true, but an account of really the background, or part of the background we have in values education around the world, and this wonderful experiment in values education in Australia, which was cut short, as some of you will know, by a change in government in Australia, where they decided to go for needed to improve PISA scores, so they cut out all this rubbish about values education, all the rest of it, and went back to a very old, more traditional approach to education. As a result of which, PISA scores, as Terry has observed in another place, PISA scores actually went down rather than up, and they lost the wonderful opportunity that they had. I mean, not totally lost, but the last 13 years. That hasn't, it really hasn't returned to that educational system. We're hoping will one day. So to continue this theme of looking back at where we've got to with values education, how it's developed, and the research that's been produced on it, I'm now going to invite Chris Aitchison-Clare to join us. Well, sorry, she's joined us, but to talk to us. Chris is, for the past 10 years, she's directed the Purdue University's Center for Intercultural Learning, Mentorship, Assessment and Research, and created the Intercultural Learning Hub there, a resource for interculturalists. And her research broadly focuses on the assessment of intercultural competence and transformative learning. And I'm going to hand over to you, Chris. Let me just see if I can find you on this list and nicely spotlight you for everyone.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk to you about some of the research that's been done in values-based education. And in this project, first of all, let me say I'm not just reflecting my own personal brilliance in talking about this research today. This chapter that I'm providing some insights from. It was actually written by a very large group of probably 20 folks, and so I'm reflecting the collective brilliance of the group there. Um, but this chapter, which was actually called "Demonstrating the Value of Values-Based Education: What We've Learned About Learning," from specifically one instrument, the Beliefs, Events, and Values Inventory. We basically pulled together a couple decades of research using this instrument, the BEVI, to think about what it says about values-based education and where we go from here with research, knowing what we have learned from this instrument. I should say that the research with the BEVI conceptualizes values-based education in a very broad way, as a type of values-based intervention, which also includes a very wide range of types of learning experiences and activities that go beyond the traditional classroom, that go beyond structured school settings, and include really things like environmental education and education for sustainable development, gender sensitivity training, international multicultural education, leadership development, even things like mental health clinician training. And it's not just about educating children, it's also about adult learning as well. And so when we think about values-based education within that larger setting, what we learn is that values-based education includes two sort of distinct but interwoven types of activities, and those are teaching about beliefs and values and then teaching of beliefs and values. And that distinction is going to become important. You'll see as I draw some of these insights out of this chapter that we wrote. So, just a quick mention of what this instrument is about. The Beliefs, Events, and Values Inventory is a mixed method instrument. It's quantitative in the sense that it is a psychometric instrument that has 185 items that people respond to, and it also collects qualitative data for 3 open-ended responses. But this instrument basically identifies patterns across groups, between groups, within groups, and at the individual level gives participants themselves who take the BEVI and also anyone who's working with them a sort of picture of what their values and beliefs are, especially in comparison to other people. So that can be really important formative work. In other words, it's not just an instrument that gives us information about cross-sectionally where people are and longitudinally where they grow to, but can be instrumental in the process of growth itself as an actual learning intervention and not just as a tool to measure beliefs and values. So a couple of key insights that I just want to highlight from this research project. First of all, the BEVI makes it really very clear that people's values actually can be measured and that we can see patterns emerge in, for example, values that you would expect to be different when you look at people who come from different cultural groups. That shows up on an instrument like the BEVI. But also within any particular demographic group, we see really important distinctions emerge on this instrument that highlights how people get structured differently by the experiences that they have and how they respond to those differences. Basically, in a process of getting their needs met, they are structured into a particular value system. And when we see the results on the BEVI, what becomes clear is that that structure of the self becomes really important in determining how we interact with other people, how we interact with the larger world around us. And we can actually predict, using an instrument like this, how people will behave and what choices they'll make in their work, in their relationships, in their lives. And we can also see how those patterns of behavior will change over time in response to learning interventions such as values-based education. And I think one of the most important insights to me from this work is that we have to be super intentional about values-based education because intentionality actually doesn't carry us very far in this work. When we see data from Bevy research projects, we unfortunately see sometimes that values-based education can backfire if we don't go about it using practices that are effective, if we do things like challenge people's identity without providing support for identity change, if we foster negative feelings like shame that people want to retreat from, then overtly fostering values in a values-based education program won't necessarily work. And it could even create a really harsh backlash from the learners themselves and from other people in the community who react negatively to that pressure to shape values in a particular way. So research has demonstrated for us within values-based education, first of all, the need for values-based education, but secondly, what values-based education looks like when it's done well, and what techniques or strategies we might want to avoid when we're engaging in values-based education or creating learning experiences grounded in this philosophy and this tradition so that we can be more effective. And the bottom line is that we need more of this research. So we need not only more studies, but we also need more ways to talk about and disseminate the knowledge that has already been gained from values-based education research. And to this point, one thing that GAVE is trying to do is sponsor more research and also disseminate more knowledge about the research. So I have recently taken on a leadership role with the GAVE Research Committee. And when we met last week, we decided that we're going to pursue a couple of different options. We're going to be looking for some grant funds that we might be able to use in a pass-through manner in order to fund small research projects to GAVE members. And then we also want to play a role in telling people more about the research that already exists. And so for that purpose, we're going to sponsor a blog project, hopefully on the GAVE website, that will invite any of you today, any GAVE member, and really anybody even peripherally involved with GAVE to contribute a blog post to our blog project. These will be small blogs, 500 to 1,000 words, really targeting a lay audience. So translating either research that has inspired you or research that you're currently conducting and explaining it in ways that really impact people meaningfully and can spread the good word about what's happening in research and values-based education. So you'll be hearing more about that from us via email and the GAVE website, and I hope that you'll get involved in creating more and talking more about research in values-based education.
Thank you so much, Chris. That's fantastic, and I think it really that talk encapsulates a lot of what we're really about in GAVE. I mean, not just in terms of research, but just in terms of GAVE providing a structure and mobilizing all the resources that are potentially available to us around the world, with so many people involved actually in values education, either from the point of view of research or from the point of view of practitioners putting various initiatives into action in different parts of the world. So we've got a lot of research, we've got a lot of actual experience there, but it's a question of bringing it all together and making people aware of it and just generating the filling the gaps that we need to fill to make it a really compelling, unavoidable argument that we can present to policymakers, that we can present, well, bottom up and top down, frankly. We need to do all of that, and that for me is the need for GAVE. That's why we need GAVE. The world needs GAVE. I think that we all think the time is right. We probably think the time, it could have been a few years ago, but I mean, let's grab the opportunity now and really try and make this thing move. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion, a forum, an open forum, where we'd love you to ask any questions you've got to ask or make any observations. And the speakers, the GAVE speakers that are here today can respond appropriately as relevant. So I'm going to just say a couple more words. I think I've probably said enough, but I've said why I think GAVE is needed, and I think that is a sentiment shared by us all. and about our vision, which is to not just be a nice place for us to meet, although hopefully it will be a nice place for us to meet, but we want to actually make things change. We want to change the way that the educational system works as far as we can around the world. Not obviously all in one go, but we need to start making some real inroads. This is urgently needed. The time is right, not just because we're ready, but because, my goodness, the world really needs values education now. So I'm going to throw it open now to anyone. If you've got a question or want to make a comment, please either raise your hand, as Aishwarya has just done, or mechanically, digitally, or raise a real live physical hand if you wish. Aishwarya, yeah, over to you.
First of all, thank you for being here. I'm really happy that I was able to join all of you. Thank you, Charles sir, and all of the people who are associated with such a great initiative. And it seems it's a very essential one, which all of you have been collaborating with, because today's world has been very mechanical, and I'm pretty sure that the young ones who are the future of our world should have this sort of value-based inclusion in their education system. So it is really interesting, informative, and I just had a reality check with all of that data that reflecting all the practices that is happening around. As said rightly, we all belong to different cultures and different backgrounds, so we do need this sort of ideas for us to collaborate and connect from human perspective. So as being an online course instructor and also from an performing arts background, I have seen younger ones and many people reflecting differently their values. So is there any way that I could join and be member of this association?
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
something that I was.
We're keen to, where Craig in a minute will hopefully describe how you can become a member. There's an application process, there's a website. He'll tell you all about it. But just before we do that, and before we move on to Maddie, who's also got a question, David Rouse,
All right.
You might like to say something a little bit about, because Aishwarya talked about the creative side of education in relation to
Yes,
that.
because it's arts is also again an education,
Yeah.
which might bring different creative ideas in living. So we would like to bring more of values in that sort of enrichment. So I was just thinking it would
So
be
I'll
a
ask,
great idea for me to affiliate and contribute some little thing that I could manage. So
okay.
thank you for giving me opportunity to
Thank
speak
you.
and ask. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, David, do you have any comment on creativity and the arts as in relation to what we're trying to do here?
Indeed, Charles, because of course the arts also have their values, and the values are important, although they're frequently overlooked. And sadly, those values are seen more as entertainment, in the sense that beauty these days is looked on as something out of a pot, or something you get from plastic surgery, or something else which is fairly superficial. I'm a great believer in the three a priori of truth, beauty, and goodness. And if you strip any of those out, then there's not a wholeness there, there's not a completeness there, there's not a unity there. And that's one of the things that I think is sadly lacking today. So when we're talking about values, we're talking about human values, and those include truth and include beauty in the sense of, does it all fit together? Does it fit in harmony? Does it fit within me comfortably, and so on, as well as the ethics, all of which are important, and all of which I think if they're not included, they're not part of each other, then you get fragmentation, you get disunity, and eventually you end up with a world which is not dissimilar to the one that we find ourselves in currently. So, yeah, I mean, we're not talking about one part of education. We're talking about education in all its aspects, and as broad and as wide as you can imagine.
I think that's an important point, David. So I'll just cut you off a little bit there, because I know there's a couple more people have already raised their hands. But I just wanted you to be able to get that point in, which is the breadth of what we're aiming to do. It's very much includes all that side of education to do with creativity and, as you say, beauty and so on. Can I ask Maddie? Maddie, would you like to make your comment, ask your question?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me? Because my video's
That's fine. Yeah, all good.
Yeah. I've joined today because I'm involved with Charles in the UK Values Alliance, and I'm very interested in the importance of values in education, and indeed believe it's probably critical or foundational to societal development in a positive way as we educate and support young people, children, young people, and indeed adult learners. So I'm very glad that I'm here, although I don't work in education, and my children are now finished their education, and I have. But I just wanted to make a sort of observation, possibly a question. Given the overwhelming evidence from, say, developmental psychology and also educational research about the importance of values in education, I've been interested as a newcomer to this particular forum why values-based education has been so marginalized. I know you will all know this because you've been very active for a very long time. But I'm just interested how such evidence-based approaches to values education have been so neglected. Charles, you made a reference to a shift in syllabus across, I don't know if it was global, but certainly in a number of countries that actually moved away and excluded it. So given that, how optimistic are you? I feel optimistic, but how optimistic are you about this movement having the impact it needs, given that trend? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very good question, Maddie. Thank you very much. Given the evidence, given the experience of values education, how is it that we haven't made the impact we now hope to make? And perhaps why should it be different now? Who would like to answer that? I don't know, Neil, Craig?
I'll just say a word about that.
Yeah.
I think we can be more optimistic than we seem. You know, if you take national governments, they often ignore because, as Terry said, they're focused on what they call academic attainment and exams and all the rest of it. But on the ground, you know, I always say one of my claims to infamy is I probably visited more schools worldwide than most people. And as I go around, I see so many schools that, despite the official agenda, they still have a lot of what we're talking about today running through them. So I think we need to identify and celebrate more. You know, I was in a school last week in Birmingham in the UK. It was an incredible school in the most challenging of places. And the staff, because I always say separate people from systems. And there are so many wonderful teachers and support staff who are doing incredible things and are more values-based than you think. Most schools now think about values, but if I switch us over to Sweden and Iceland and Norway and Denmark, which I know quite well, then you'll see heaps of values-based stuff going on naturally in the culture. So often people, as we've said before, don't realize they're doing this thing. But shoving it up to the official agenda is a challenge. But the more we can get people at grassroots to understand how wonderful this work is, then we will influence the politicians, change the mindsets of communities, as I think we're beginning to do. But our organization will do this, I think, more effectively than we've done before.
I think that's the answer, isn't it? Together, we stand a much better chance of making an impact than we do individually as individual organizations and individual people as well around the world. Irina, sorry, yes.
Before we go on to another question, I'd just like to add, I think it actually in this moment with AI, there's a lot of scary things with AI and a lot of very real dangers in terms of the educational system. But I think there's also an opportunity because educators, I think, in this moment have an opportunity to define what is truly unique about human teachers. When AI can do a lot of the, knowledge transmission and cognitive kinds of things that traditionally teachers may have been doing. What is it that human teachers bring to the educational system that is so important for actual human development? And the relationship that we've talked about, the character development that is so key to values-based education. These are where human teachers shine.
If I may, I'll just make a couple quick observations on this question of why hasn't this taken off. I think you're hearing the answers to some of that from our perspective, at least. One of them is data research. We need people to understand what these things called values are. And then we need to show empirically through mixed methods, quantitative, qualitative research. Certainly the bevy can be part of that, but there are lots of other measures out there that can help as well, and lots of other paradigms out there that can help to show the impact of this kind of work. The other thing I'll just comment on is that what's really nice about these kinds of convenings, this being the second of the day, is look how interdisciplinary it is. I have friends I see on this call from people like Jerry Burgess, who's a well-known neuropsychologist in the world, all the way to John Stile, who's a professor of English and humanities in Spain. So you hear one thing I think that has been a problem is we've relegated our work to disciplinary spheres, and we have not embraced the entire spectrum. To many of David Rouse's points just a little bit ago, we need this because it's sort of the feminine, quite frankly, gets excluded from STEM type approaches. You understand what I'm saying, I hope. And we need a much more integrated approach that values and embraces the entire spectrum of human expression. So I think we need to keep our mind and our efforts clearly focused on that as Gabe unfolds. If we do that, show the evidence, make things clear, come together around the world, I think we will have much more success over the long term.
So thank you, Maddie, again for the question, because it was a really good one. And I think it's sparked off a really good series of responses. We are running a little bit short of time, so 2 more questions. Irina, you were wanting to speak a little while ago, and I'm sorry to take time to come to you. Irina, sorry, you're on mute. This is Irina Maslow from Latvia. Irina, you need to unmute.
Yeah. At first, thank you for all speakers. It's very, very important what aspects we stress it. I have not so directly the question, but maybe some comments. Yeah. I started to work on human capability as innovative teacher at the school on all levels, and then doctorate and habilitation. But I see one gap between the generation, and we can observe it in our group now. It is one gap between the generation in understanding for what we will educate. And in my opinion, what do you think? The first one is one shortcoming is we speak about individuals, about individual development. It is not true for school for all. Yes, we must define not. We must educate not for values, about the values. Then they are different by peoples, and I am not true that with investigation we can explore the values of peoples. Yes, and they can tell not the things what they do. We must define what kind of human we like. It is at first. Yeah. I work now at this topic. So we will have humans, yeah, and so as we live now in technologies, post-technology century, artificial intelligence. Time we need smart thinking human, Yeah, smart thinking
I
human.
think you're right.
And I think it is the first point we must define what type of human we like. The next one is related to teacher education, I think. Yeah, then what we will teach? Will we develop the personality, moral education, intercultural education, language education? It is not integrated. Yes, we must speak about facilitating of smart human learning. Also, we must change, we must speak not about the teaching, but about the facilitation of human learning.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
of
that's
human
interesting.
learning. And we need to create spaces for learning. It must be intra-individual, inter-individual, spiritual, yeah, using technologies, different technologies. And we must support the peoples to develop himself, yes, himself, and to act for transforming of classroom, of school, of country, and another things. Yeah, that my problem is now we have defined literary education, but what we see as values, European values, national values, but we must describe the human people as value. Yeah,
Okay.
human
I think,
people.
Irina,
Yeah,
I'm going to cut you off a little bit now
yeah.
because we're running over time, and I think you've made some very
Thank
powerful
you.
points.
Thank you.
So
I can speak 1 week long.
no.
Yeah,
It's
thank
good.
you.
What you say is very relevant, and thank you very much. And as I
Thank
said,
you.
I'm only cutting you short a little bit because we are a little bit out of time. And I just wanted, before we wrap up, to just hear from Brian Bantalan, who just wanted. You can keep it brief, Brian. It's very good. I don't know how you managed to keep awake so late in the Philippines, but you're here and you're still alive. So over to you. You were going to make an observation or ask something.
Yes. Thank you, Charles. This is just an addition to the question of Madi a while ago. How can we make an impact? Actually, in the Philippines, we are blessed and lucky enough because of the clamor to bring back values in education. So we have the Republic Act. It's already part of our law that the basic education will have a values education subject from grade 1 to grade 12. But the problem I now see is that there is this clamor for training. That is why, while observing, listening to the discussion, it's a eureka moment for me because in GAVE we can convene together for a training, capacitate the teacher to become a values-based educator, and as well as more on research to strengthen the sustainability of the implementation of a values-based education. So with this gathering, with this convention and conference, especially now, I am happy and I am excited to what we can do next, not only in the Philippines, but in the world.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. And it is indeed very interesting now that the Philippines does have this. Well, I say now, it's had it for the last, I think, 3 years, a law which mandates the teaching of values education throughout the whole school system, which is quite remarkable, but practical problems to be overcome. Thank you, Brian, then. Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Ashwarya. And thank you, all the speakers.